Hello, my name is Agata Zelechowska, and in this talk, I would like to present an experiment design that Alexander Jensenius, Victor Gonzalez Sanchez, and me have developed and used over the last few years. It's called the Championship of Standstill, and it's a paradigm for studying involuntary responses to music with the use of motion capture. In this presentation, I will first give you some background for the Championship of Standstill development. Then I will explain the methodology, review the editions that we conducted, and summarize the main findings. I would also like to discuss our practice of sharing data and give some tips for anyone who might be interested in running a similar experiment in the future. In the literature about music and body movement, we can find many statements that suggest that listening to music can induce body movement. For example, music moves us, makes us move, impels or compels us to move. There is an urge, drive, compulsion, proclivity, or propensity to move. But as far as we know, no studies have actually proved empirically that music induces movement. Even motion capture studies that say they investigate music-induced movement are actually studies on free dance, where participants are asked to move, but not instructed how they should move. So we asked the question, does music really make us move? Can we resist this urge to move to music? In our studies, we asked the participants to stand as still as possible while they listen to music. I'll show you an example. So obviously, people cannot stand completely still. There is always some small movement happening, which we call micromotion. In the Championship of Standstill, we wanted to see whether music can make it more difficult to stand still. For this purpose, we invited groups of participants to the motion capture laboratory for a short listening session. We recorded their movement while standing still in silence and when listening to various types of music. We measured their head movement with one motion capture marker placed on the top of the head. The instruction was to stand as still as possible. And to motivate participants to do the task, there was a prize for the winner who moved the least. So far, we have done 5 editions of this experiment. I will now describe each edition very briefly. 4 of them are published in research papers. So if you would like to know more details, we encourage you to see these papers. In the first edition, we had 91 participants listening to 3 minutes of various types of music after 3 minutes of standing in silence. When we compared how much participants moved in music and silence, we noticed that indeed there is more movement to music than in silence. However, the major problem here is that there was just one block of silence and one block of music afterwards. So one could argue that participants moved more to music just because it was the second block and they perhaps felt more tired. So in the second edition, we split the silence and music into smaller segments that were played in a randomized order. However, again, there were several flaws with the design of this experiment. Major one is that the order of playing music and silent segments was not well controlled. So some participants listened to a few music examples without silence in between. Some started with a long period of silence and then a bit of music. And in the end, we decided that this is just too messy and it introduces too much variation. So this data is not good enough to be published. So we ran the championship again. In 2017, we used 3 music styles: electronic dance music, a Norwegian telespringer dance, and Indian vocal music. These examples were played in a randomized order and alternating with segments of silence, which we continued to do in the following editions. We decided to extract 3 music features: pulse clarity, amplitude, and spectral centroid, and to run cross correlations with music features. Again, like in 2012, we observed that people move more to music, but actually only one type of music, electronic dance music, and that out of the tested music features, only pulse clarity increases movement compared to silence. So in the next edition, we decided to focus only on stimuli with clear pulse, ranging from artificial beat tracks to electronic dance music. Again, we observed more movement to music. In this paper, we ran a detrended fluctuation analysis. We observed fractal-like organization of head movement during standstill, which again was influenced by music. If you want to know more details, please see the paper. In the last edition, we decided to compose all stimuli ourselves and focus on the tempo and rhythmic complexity. We made some stimuli from drum samples, similar to the Japanese taiko performances. We wanted the stimuli to sound not artificial, but something that perhaps could be heard in real life. Here we observed again more movement to sound compared to silence, and more movement to complex than isochronous rhythms, and more movement to 120 beats per minute compared to other tempi. Let's see some examples. In a very short summary, our experiments showed that yes, music does make us move. And not every music, however. Rhythmic music induces movement, and especially at a tempo of 120 beats per minute. And we also showed that movement to music can be involuntary. Now I would like to mention our policy of publishing data. So first of all, we wanted everything from these experiments to be open access, not just the articles based on the experiments, but also the data itself. So we created something called Oslo Standstill database, where all the data from subsequent editions and other similar experiments are published. And we also published some of the data in Physionet. So this is how the Oslo Standstill database looks at the moment. You can find it on the web page under the link, which is visible at on the top of this page. And the data is organized in a table where you can see that each championship has different types of data available for public download. And now, if you decide to run a similar study, we would like to give you some tips based on our experience. First of all, you might wonder whether motion capture systems are sensitive enough to record such small and barely visible movement, since they have not been invented for this specific purpose. We tested a few versions of Qualisys and OptiTrack systems, and they proved suitable for this purpose. If you would like to know more details, please contact us. We also advise you to put some reference markers in a few spots in the room at the level of participants' heads, for example, placed on tripods. And in this way, it is later possible to filter noise from the actual movement data. We also recommend to play alternating segments of silence and music of your choice, and to set an attractive price, because we believe that without the price, there is a higher risk that some participants might not treat the task seriously and be less motivated to try to remain still. Another issue to consider is the distribution of sound and people in the laboratory space. For example, over the different editions, we changed the arrangement of speakers. We used 4 speakers in the corner. We used 2 speakers mounted on the ceiling or on tripods, an array of 24 speakers. We used subwoofer or not used a subwoofer. So we also planned to use headphones in the next edition, which did not happen because of the coronavirus outbreak. We believe that the playback system might be an important factor to consider in this type of experiment, and it would be great to test several options in a systematic manner. Also mind that people who stand in the first row, for example, might experience the experiment differently than those in the last rows, not only because of the distribution of sound, but also because they don't see a person standing in front of them. In our experiments, we didn't see any effect of the participant position within the lab, but again, it should be considered. And we also encourage you to come up with and test different conditions, types of music, etc., and to document everything you're doing to allow for future comparisons and replications. It would be great if you archive your data openly, and then we could create the Standstill database together. This project has been a part of Micro-Human Bodily Micromotion in Music Perception and Interaction project that was conducted at the University of Oslo. To learn more about the project and other experiments we have done, please visit our webpage. That's it. Thank you very much for your attention.